Welcome back and good evening. Thank you for joining us on the Urban Debate at 9 p.m. Viewers, we've repeatedly had conversations about mental health, had conversations about how we must acknowledge the issues and how we must prepare to tackle these issues. As important as your physical health is, your mental health is also as important. Tonight, though, I want to tell you that there is now a warning that has been put out by United Nations saying that this is going to be the worst ever crisis, even in terms of mental health problems, owing to coronavirus, owing to the pandemic that has gripped this entire country right now, and this is going to impact even our peace of mind, aggravate mental health conditions, aggravate mental health problems, and become a huge issue for countries across the world. Now, as you know, viewers, we are already in our country highly short-staffed in terms of help available, counselors available, psychiatrists available when it comes to mental health. There is also a massive stigma that's attached. Unfortunately, even now, people think twice before talking about it. People think twice before even admitting it and seeking professional help. But it is important for us to get rid of that stigma. It is important for us to acknowledge that these are tough times. It is important for us to acknowledge that the economic turmoil that our country has been going through, now aggravated because of coronavirus, is going to have an impact on our lives and on our mental health. And we have to take care of that. It is important to acknowledge that being in a lockdown within the confines of a four walls is going to have an impact on our relationships. How we interact with our friends, with our family, that is going to get impacted since we are in this situation that we are not used to. So one more time, I want you to join us in this conversation. Pick up your phone, call us, share what's going on in your life. If you think there is a trouble, if you think there is something going on that you are not able to comprehend or understand or handle, we have experts with us on our show. Let's talk. Let's share. Tonight here on the Urban Debate. Let's say good evening to Dr. Rashmin Cholera, psychiatrist, joining us this evening. Dr. Jitendra Nagpal, senior psychiatrist with Moolchand Medicity and program director for Expressions India National Life Skills Education Initiatives. Usha Krishnamurthy, counselor with Apollo Shine, joins us this evening. But first up, I actually want to go across to Dr. Gangadhar, director for NIMHANS, who's with us. Dr. Gangadhar, in your own experience, even for NIMHANS, have the queries gone up? Have the number of people who are seeking help gone up in the last 2 months?
You are right. When the COVID episode started, we had closed the outpatient services because of the lockdown. But the emergencies were going on. We realized that people needed help. We initiated a helpline, which became a national helpline under the Department of Health, and not just NIMHANS, several other institutions also receiving calls. We initially started receiving as many as about 1,000 calls a day. That calls increased day by day and has gotten actually plateaued in the meantime. People are reaching out to the hospital through the telephone telemedicine services. And we have also started a IVRS to help people call up for psychiatric help if they already have a registration in NIMHANS, and people are already seeking out to receive help. It's true that the current corona pandemic has contributed to an extraordinary amount of stress. It is a usual stress, but from an unusual situation which has impacted everyone.
Yes, Mr. Gangadhar, before I go to our other panelists, if you could just give us an insight into the kind of issues that people are facing, of the additional corona impact that you're seeing on people who are approaching, simply from the point of view that if our viewers hear what you're talking about, some of them will perhaps relate and know that they're not the only ones who are going through similar symptoms or feelings.
There are 3 or 4 types of concerns that we come across. One is fear of myself getting corona. fear of my family getting corona, fear that it would lead to a morbid and even a final stage of ending my life. So this is one fear about the disease. Second thing is fear of being stigmatized. Even if I get well, would I be making others become ill because of my past connection with that virus? So this some concerns about stigma is still quite high. Then all the stress related to the lockdown, which of course each person experiences the lockdown stress differently. And last but not any less important is availability of help to receive medicines, particularly in psychiatric illnesses. They will be receiving medicines for several months to years, some even for life. For these people, if medicines are not available, there's going to be some distress. Even if medicine was available, many people would be happy to keep in touch with their doctor for a reassurance or for a counseling or one of those things. And uh, in a way, drug related problems, particularly alcohol, initially alcohol was not available. We saw a spate of people who are coming with withdrawal symptoms. Now alcohol is available. What it will mean, we have no idea. And staying at home, we thought people would come socially closer and get a healthier interactions between each other. But there is a group of people who end up having a lot of distress, disharmony, leading to various family conflicts as well. This is a range of conditions that we have seen. Thanks to the Medical Council of India, around the time when we had this lockdown, it introduced the guidelines and made telemedicine a legitimate method of approaching health. There are a lot of people who are seeking out help on telemedicine, and NIMHANS itself has conducted training courses to a lot of doctors, psychiatrists in particular, how to become familiar and be able to reach their people through the telemedicine services.
Okay, thank you so much for those those insights. Let me ask Usha Krishnamurthy as well. Usha Krishnamurthy, would you want to add to that in your experience? Even with Apollo Shine, the kind of queries or problems that people are sharing right now. What's the biggest trend that you've observed in the last few weeks?
I think you mentioned Apollo Shine. A lot of organizations, just like Apollo Shine as well, has been doing tremendous work in bringing awareness about how we can tide this time, this unusual time that we're all going through. I think I'd like to draw attention to the fact that we cannot, not acknowledge that as a nation we have really stepped up our game. I think we should all also take this time to pat ourselves on the back and congratulate ourselves for the fact that we've come so far. This is our third lockdown, and we are progressing pretty well. As human beings, I think we adapt very well, and we are adapting to this new normal that we seem to be having. So I'd like to, also, I think we need to also feel good at a time like this, that we are managing, we are trying to cope, and that's very, very important. I mean, not discounting whatever issues are there, but can we also take a moment to say, we are doing okay.
Right, right. In fact, I was, going to ask that. The next question would have been that, Dr. Rashmin Cholera, maybe you can come in on that. How do we deal with this? It's new for most of us. We're not used to being home indoors 24/7. We're not used to even being around. Some of us are not even used to being around our family members for so long, constantly, without having any space to get out or to take a break. Some of us are going through stress because of job concerns, whether or not our business will survive, whether or not we will have a job tomorrow, and that's just adding on to all of this pressure. Plus, like Dr. Gangadhar was saying, it's the fear of what if I get coronavirus tomorrow or somebody in my family gets. How do we try and tackle this?
It's a very pertinent question, and the challenges that we encounter are manifold. In terms of the fear and in terms of the psychological trauma and the distress that we encounter, we have distress that is encountered by the general people, the lay people at large. We have a lot of stress that is encountered and mental health consequences in the essential caregivers, in terms of the public transport providers, in terms of the administration, in terms of all the essential services like, say, the sewage cleaning, etc., and the waste management. And then, of course, there is the huge amount of mental trauma and the stress that the healthcare providers directly involved in COVID care have to encounter. And all of them have their own sets of perspectives and their own sets of anxieties. The lay people at large are clearly concerned about availability of healthcare resources. Again, I'd like to bring your attention to the fact that the situation is a little different in different states and different cities. For example, Mumbai, where I am from, is perhaps the worst affected of them all. And so the challenges that we face are a little different from some other places. Say, for example, the second tier, two-tier cities, the smaller villages or small towns, they are having financial hardships and economic difficulties, which are the biggest stresses. Migrant workers have their own issues. But say, for example, a layperson living in Mumbai is absolutely terrified of the scenario that is unfolding itself with all of us. They are worried about access to healthcare. All hospital beds are full. Patients are running helter-skelter for not just their COVID-related complaints, but even their other medical issues. So they have a fear about what is going to happen. In terms of the essential care givers, these essential services, they have their own anxieties. They're the ones, for example, the best workers, right? The local public transport providers. They are extremely worried because they're having a lot of positive cases and a few casualties as well. So they are protesting with the administration in terms of providing them with PPEs and providing them with good care. The police force is also at the receiving end of the brunt of COVID. Many of their personnel are affected, and they are also having a tough time getting access to good health care. And the biggest challenge is now for doctors. I have spoken with a lot of my colleagues who are directly involved in COVID care in all major hospitals, in Sion Hospital, in Nair Hospital. All of these have been in the news for most of the right reasons and some wrong reasons. But they are also extremely anxious because they are seeing the kind of scenario unfold which nobody had ever envisaged, right? There are people who are flooding into the hospitals. There are not enough beds. There's a wait list to get into a good COVID care hospital. There are people dying on you. And the trauma to the young resident doctors who are the frontline workers, the trauma that the doctors who are at the front line of COVID care, from the chest medicine department, from the emergency medicine department, from the general medicine department, from the anesthesiology department, the intensive care workers, they are working at the absolute edge of health versus ill health. So they have their own stresses and traumas as well. So we have to be able to acknowledge these, and all of them are going to have a huge effect of all of this. Eventually, they will have to deal with it. And in a sense, just the way you might see after any calamity, after, say, an earthquake or after, say, a deluge like we had in Mumbai some years back, we are inevitably going to see some cases of post-traumatic stress disorder or some psychological consequences amongst all these workers as well. So we have to prepare for all of these. And Dr. Gangadhar and all the other senior panelists will acknowledge that they have been making a lot of efforts. NIMHANS has been the frontline agency in all of these efforts, but we all will need to put in our resources, and we will have to kind of prepare ourselves for the battle ahead. the COVID workers are working with COVID, but there's going to be a lot of
Right.
morbidity with the non-COVID healthcare as well. So we have to be prepared for it, and we have to take all the corrective measures in advance. We are forewarned, so we have to take corrective measures soon.
Yes, in fact, the United Nations says that COVID virus is not only attacking our physical health, but it's also increasing our psychological suffering. That mental health problems are some of the greatest causes of misery, and that already across the world, it's not just India, they are seeing higher than usual levels of symptoms of depression and anxiety, which is being recorded. Now, according to United Nations, what we can do to minimize the impact is to have a whole of society kind of an approach to promote, to protect and care for mental health. We ensure that there is availability of emergency mental health and psychosocial support, and that the COVID recovery itself is also, supported by some amount of mental health services. And in fact, United Nations says it's an extremely important thing that we need to do right now, which is to ensure that we start building for future as well the availability of such services. And Dr. Nagpal, that's going to be a big challenge for India. We are already hugely understaffed when it comes to experts, psychiatrists, psychologists, counselors being available in our country in terms of our population.
Hello. Am I audible?
Yes, Dr. Nagpal, can you? Yes, you are. Go ahead, please.
There's no doubt. I've been listening to the experts here, and when we go by the warning of the United Nations towards the mental health crisis, I think the factors that come to my mind, I'd like to summarize it in three approaches. One is the context of the COVID-19. We have the population, very important. I'm very happy to hear the panelists. Specific populations and the specific vulnerability has to be measured, and how we look at the levels of care, as you were just mentioning. Now, the context is very clear. We have almost a parallel pandemic going to come up in mental health. And this has been perceived, it has been anticipated. We forget that the suddenness, the unexpected nature, the unanticipated crisis that came in, engulfing the whole world, India, of course, and the large magnitude of population that has been affected. What about those who are already millions and millions suffering from mental illness, have been under treatment? For them, I think it is a state of mind which is probably going to relapse. And the stressors which we have discussed is going to be horrendously haunting them. There's a huge population, as the WHO and the UN are talking about, which is asymptomatic in mental health also. When we talk of COVID being asymptomatic, I think it's time we talk of mental illnesses being asymptomatic and perceived hidden factors like the family helping them right now during the lockdowns. What about when the lockdowns get a little released? We move out. The migrant workers, we can see them. What about the employees? So when we look at the vulnerable populations, I think the mental health scenario, a whole country, the whole nation approach to the mental health scenario has to be taken up. And it is never going to be the few thousands of psychiatrists who can take care of the mental health of India. I believe very strongly that the mental health first aiders, the primary care workers like the teachers, the counselors, the elderly members in the family, the leaders in the community, the RWAs, these are the ones who are our army for mental health for tomorrow and the 21st century. I think the time has come, probably, unfortunately, because of the COVID-19, to actually reshape the landscape of mental health services in the primary care of the country. We understand that tertiary care, we have great institutions, many hospitals, but yes, of course, as you are mentioning here, the data, the beds are less, the psychiatrists are less. But most important is a large majority can be preventive mental health care. We need to understand that, for example, the elderly population, in our helplines from the hospital and in the NGOs, thousands of helplines are running even in Delhi. I think the major factor that has come to the forefront is the mental health warriors. We need mental health warriors and mental health first aiders. We also need psychiatrists and psychologists, but what about that huge population? You look at the number of suicides of students in India, thousands of them per year. This is the time when the vulnerability will go up. Education system is going through a revolutionary change. employment sector is going to a much bigger revolutionary change. The life events and the resilience is going to be questioned, and the vulnerability will be questioned. And I think the psychiatrists in institutions and in private care should come forward, join hands, and do countrywide research, not in pockets. It has to be done as a countrywide research to understand the needs of mental health services in the country. I'm talking about depression, anxiety, uncertainty, fear of the unknown, the fear of dying, and also a degree of helplessness. Look at children. Online classes are going on. They have to complete their homework. They have challenges. The teachers are helping them. Millions of teachers are actually playing the role of counselors. Hats off to them. I think they're also frontline workers. So the home atmosphere has changed all of a sudden. The school has gone to the family. The family has become a school. The elderly people in the family have taken a leadership role, and I think they can be mental health warriors, the experienced mental health warriors for the elderly people and the large family. So what I'm trying to say in a nutshell, the vulnerability will rise because it is a parallel pandemic going on, the mental health pandemic of COVID-19. But when it comes
Yes.
tomorrow, I think the
Yes.
practices and the policies need to take care of the vulnerable populations, not to forget the special need people, the disabled people. We are coming across so many of them who are fraught with comorbidities and mental health disorders. We need to take care of a large numbers. That's my look at the thing of the mental health landscape for tomorrow.
Yes. We need to take care of a huge number of people, basis what you're saying, and you're absolutely right there. If I can go back to Dr. Gangadhar. Dr. Gangadhar, but right now we are in a state of lockdown, and travel isn't easy. Even going to counseling centers, going to hospitals to meet your doctor isn't easy. So what do we do at this point of time? Yes, there are a few helplines which are functional, but many people often call us and ask us this question, that where do I seek help? Who do I go to? How do I do it? I'm stuck at home.
There is a paucity of information, or the information that has reached might have made people extraordinarily panic. Number one, we know that this disease is a widely and fastly spreading disease, but at the same time, we need to know that the majority are asymptomatic or even very mildly symptomatic, and most of them get well totally. It's only a small fraction, I would say about 3 to 5% across different parts of the statistics in the world have a mortality in terms of this disease. Again, the younger population usually are spared from this severe outcome of the illness. The illness itself does not leave a lasting impression like HIV infection or the hepatitis B infection, where once infected, the individual remains infected forever. This is not so is the case with the COVID. My own feeling is there's some positive things about, or things which are not going to make the individual very scared have to be also in a loud tone said to the patients, to the public. Like you said, the UN approach of involving the entire community. One is correct information. The second thing is there are a lot of positive things that they can do themselves which can keep their wellness much better. It could be exercises, it could be living with your family members with a quality life, a quality time, doing yoga or meditation, or doing several of your hobbies which you wanted to do when you were working. You thought you never had time, you were under pressure of work, and you're going to get a lot of time. Whether these leisurely activities, there are many of these things that can make the wellness much better. At the same time, yesterday when the Honorable PM was addressing, we have to exploit technology in the days to come. Technology has come very handy when it comes to reaching out mental health services. Like I said, the telephone helpline, there are a lot of people who want to help, and they can be taught with some minimum intervention, minimum training, how they can listen to people who have anguish or anxiety. Not so much to counsel them or advise them, but merely listening to them and helping them to find ways which is available in their own resources can be very helpful. Lot of good Samaritans, lot of NGOs, a lot of voluntary agencies, and many other people who, for the first time, have jumped to help the public, may it be carrying ration to the migrant workers or getting medicines to some people who have to get these medicines from the shops or from the hospitals, helping out people to be brought to the hospital in their own cars when ambulances are not available. There can be any number of examples that I have myself seen in our hospital where people are brought for help or
Yeah.
a neighbor is asking for help. These things are happening. I think the public response has
Right.
been extraordinary, if you ask me. And last but not the least is virtually every state health department has jumped to the scene from many angles, not merely detecting the individuals, tracing those who are suspect, but also mobilizing several other resources, whether it is supplying rations or keeping some places where the migrants can come and stay. May not be the perfect scenario, but I think every state ministry has responded positively to be able to come to the help of these individuals. May not be 100% efficiency, may not be
Yes.
100% satisfaction to the public, but nonetheless, you have a very responsive government at all levels, state and central, across different states. So put together, the
Okay, I take
health
your
of
point.
the
Let me, in fact, go across to a viewer also. Yes, Dr. Gangadhar, I just want to go across to a couple of our callers and see if they want to share anything or ask our experts any question. But I believe the first one, the first caller is actually from Pune. Ria's on the phone line. She herself is a psychiatrist, but she wanted to make a specific point. Good evening, Ria. Go ahead, please.
Good evening to you. Good evening to everybody. I'm a psychologist here from Pune. Now here we are going to understand that fear is not what we are going to do. Instead, you adapt caution. You must adapt to precautious behavior, addictive behaviors anymore, and in form of domestic violence is only the frustration which is coming out as to people want to go out of the house when you are told to stay at home to stay safe, when you're told proper instructions are given, proper rules are given as to how to stay safe. If you're not going to follow those, then comes fear. You please, everybody must be precautious about it, and then you will not have to think of cure. Secondly, the virus is a huge litmus test to all of us in form of behavior, in form of family behavior, in form of interaction with our family members. If a human being cannot live with his own family in his own home, then this is something question worth. Just train your mind. Train your mind that this is your own family, your own home, and your own people. You must train your mind to stay with them happily. Please, you must do a lot of exercise, physical activities indoors, so that your mind gets well trained. It does not have any empty spaces where it can, like an idle mind, devil's workshop. So please, if you are going to be working from home, try and find new places, new segments where you can join in as working from home. You can do many things from home, many things for your people. So don't let yourself be idle even when you're indoors, but stay home, stay safe. You see, mental health is very important for your physical health.
Okay.
And secondly, change is very important. You must get used to this new change, new life, which is called staying at home and staying safe. So precaution is the way.
Thank you so much, Ria. Thank you. Some of the advice that you gave there would be really helpful. Thank you for calling in. Kanak Ranjan Day is on the phone line calling us from Kolkata. Good evening. Go ahead, please. What would you like to say?
Namaste, ma'am. Namaste all to the very beautiful people. I have a very simple question, ma'am.
Namaste.
Namaste. I have a very simple question. Let us go do it deep into the matter of the fact. How many people are affected by it? There are so many gentlemen You are
by
a very...
coronavirus, you mean?
Huh? No.
How many people are affected by what, Mr. Day? By coronavirus or with a mental health condition?
Not go into the details because we don't have the figure because it is an assumption because you people there on the very beautiful things and all the gentlemen in the panel, the very poor people who don't have a very simple thing to have a little food. How can they be analyzed?
Correct.
And how can the total picture of this thing? I am not blaming the media, please. Don't take it otherwise, ma'am. Neither I am telling of the people in the panel. I am telling only the simple...
No, you're right. There are thousands and lakhs of people there, Mr. Day, who right now are struggling for food and are on the streets trying to get home. And of course, for them, their immediate focus is survival. But that is exactly the point, Mr. Day, that some of our experts were making about these vulnerable groups who will have an impact, of this entire experience on their minds, on their mental health, and that also at some point we will have to cater to. There will be an impact that they also undergo. So it's not just about me or other people who are stuck, in their own homes. Yes, we have the comforts of our own home, and our challenges are different. People may be going through different problems about their jobs or their health or tackling relationships. And then there are the vulnerable groups who have other kinds of issues. Suffice to say, there will be an impact on everybody's mental health, and we have to be prepared for when that crisis escalates of how we are going to prepare for that. Isn't that right, Usha Krishnamurthy?
While I was talking about how we have adapted to the crisis that has come in front of us, we must also understand that we need to focus on what's going to happen when things start easing, as the lockdown gets, a little more relaxed. What is going to happen to all these people who are used to having a little time off? We must understand that this crisis has also given a break to a lot of people who have probably not had a break for a very, very long time. This crisis has probably been a challenge for some, and it's been a boon for others. So we have to understand that the challenge when you talk about mental health is going to be, how are we going to adapt to the new normal again? I call it a new normal because I don't know if we can say that our life is going to be the way it was before this crisis happened. We have to understand that now we have to work with the resources that we're going to have at our hand right now, which is limited. We're going to be, for some time, walking around with masks. We have to be, practicing social distancing. We have to maintain hygiene. I think we need to dig in a little deep. We need to look at this crisis time as a kind of learning. What is it that we're going to take from this that's going to help us adapt to another new normal? I think this is going to be the mental health challenge. For a lot of people who have managed so far, how are they going to, because we are talking about, there's been a lot of crisis. We are talking about domestic violence. We are talking about grief. Sir mentioned about PTSD and, there are a lot of people who've lost loved ones. There are a lot of people who've probably not had closure in terms of, having to grieve their loved ones. As Indians, we are used to following or falling back on our traditions. So when we are talking about mental health warriors, yes, I think the primary or the caregivers have to step in, whether it's our grandparents, whether it's our, our immediate family, our friends. I think we need to reach out and let's take a lesson from what all has happened. I think as Indians, we have all opened our hearts. We have seen a lot of lovely examples of people coming forward, connecting on a very human level, volunteering and doing whatever they can. So I think we should more than anything understand that we have it in us to deal with whatever is going to come here on, and we managed so far, so we're going to continue. Yes, there are always going to be challenges, but we have managed. So what is it that we have in us that we can count on? I think this has to be a lesson. We all should be taking something away from what has happened in this situation.
Yes, let me in fact go back to Dr. Rashmin Cholera. Dr. Rashmin, the point that we were making earlier, when you are in a state of lockdown or when movement is restricted, and it's not just right now, even as we relax some of our rules, movement will be a challenge for coming few months, and so this part isn't going away. Then how do people access professional help? Some people may not be comfortable, doing it over the phone.
Right. So the lockdown has imposed a lot of challenges on a lot of people. And fortunately, like Dr. Gangadhar and some other panelists also mentioned, technology has come to our rescue. And telemedicine has now opened up a whole new avenue for all our patients. In fact, almost 60-70% of all our patients, my own included, have moved on to the online platform. Now, I understand there are challenges. Internet access is an issue. Everybody may not have smartphones, etc. But people are calling up. People are simply making a regular phone line call from a landline. And we are trying our best to help them. There are tons of helplines as well. But access to all of these, despite the challenges, has improved significantly. Somehow, our population has proven that it is quite resilient and quite good to adapt to. In fact, our population in many studies has been proven to be a lot more easy to take on new avenues and methods compared to the population of many other countries. So in that sense, kudos to our population. We've done exceedingly well. But like you rightly said, that access to healthcare is becoming a challenge. With the lockdown eased now, see, the irony is that doctors have been operational from day one. It was the patients who were not able to reach the doctors. But most of my colleagues have been operational. Most of the hospitals are still working despite the challenges. Yes, there are limited facilities available. There are limited number of hospitals accepting admissions, but they're still there. It's not that they aren't there. But like you rightly said, we need to pay attention to the other aspects of healthcare. For example, apart from COVID, other illnesses are going to continue and they are going to have their own morbidity. It is extremely critical that we continue to pay attention to all these patients with non-COVID illnesses. For example, if a person with diabetes is not able to access healthcare, or a person with a cardiac condition, or a person with a obstructive pulmonary disease like the asthma is not able to access healthcare, their condition is going to get compromised. So if you are not going to take care of this set of population, they are going to be the potential patients with COVID complications in the future. So we have to provide good healthcare facilities to non-COVID people. Now the administration is waking up to that reality and is trying to do something about it, taking corrective measures, but we need to focus on that part too. With regards to access to healthcare, telemedicine is one. A lot of outreach programs have started. Some people have started mobile clinics which go from area to area. And so access to healthcare is now being looked at a social level, at a society level. Initially, it was all about the horse coming to the lake to take a sip of water. But now we are sending buckets of water back to where the horses' stables are. And all the doctors are going in mobile vans. Community health workers are going and providing service at the community level. It has its own set of challenges, but the administration and the medical community is waking up to this reality. And they are looking at trying to decentralize healthcare provision and try to provide healthcare at the patient's doorstep. We are encouraging local physicians, local family practitioners to set up fever OPDs as well as regular OPDs to try and encourage people to access healthcare and to be able to address their needs apart from COVID as well. So the idea is to build up the confidence of the community, to build up
Yes.
the physical resilience of the community, and the next step is to improve the mental resilience of the community. Like we have physical immunity, we also need to focus
Yes.
on improving society's psychological immunity. Just the way we have a physical vaccine, we need to have an attitude inoculation for the entire society. Unless and until we are going to be able to do that, stress is going to compromise your immunity and make you more vulnerable to various illnesses, COVID included.
Okay, let me go across to a caller on the phone line. Vivek's calling us from Mumbai. Good evening, Vivek. What would you like to share with us?
Yeah, I would like to share that. Hello? Hello?
We can hear you, Vivek. You'll just have to mute your television so that we can hear each other better.
Right. Yeah. My issue is that I'm unable to sleep at night, especially in spite of taking sleeping pills, the Alprex 0.5 and Dolrox, and I'm taking almost 17.5 mg. I'm doing a regular walk of 5 kilometers a day. But unable to sleep since the lockdown. So it's been a consistency of sleepless nights.
And is there a specific point of concern, something that is, running in your mind right now, constantly since lockdown began?
Yes, it is psychologically depression. You feel that you're not able to move out, you cannot go to park, or you cannot do your daily activity as such. Apart, I'm taking regular counseling sessions as well, but nothing seems to help.
Okay, Vivek, thank you for calling and thank you for sharing with us. And I hope things get better for you. Let me ask Dr. Nagpal if he would like to take up, Vivek's query and if there is anything that can be of help to him.
You have mentioned the best of the efforts that you're making. You were, in fact, going for a walk. You're able to look at the possibility of changing your lifestyle, maybe a little bit of meditation and yoga indoors, because we are all by and large indoors. And also, since you're already going through the process of counseling, maybe a dietary management with a little bit higher protein and some regulation on the fluid intake. Also, not to forget, excessive use of medication and the one you're mentioning, I think it'll be worthwhile to have a psychiatric opinion locally, because medication of this nature is always okay. But then prolonged use and excessive dosage will itself have its own problem in the daytime and maybe a feeling of lethargy, tiredness, listlessness. So there are many factors which probably influence the sleep pattern. And you also mentioned psychologically there are areas, maybe the worry, the fear, and the ability to go back to your routine in life, how you wish to engage yourself. You can also ask your psychologist to focus on these areas. But I insist that medication can be revised, and if there is a angle of depression you've already mentioned, maybe a combination which helps the anxiety and depression together may be a good idea, along with the psychotherapy and a day-to-day activity scheduling of your life. Wish you good luck.
Thank you for that, Dr. Nagpal. Dr. Gangadhar, a point was made earlier on this show about, how the first rung of health can be people around the society itself, RWA. Now, just for family members and friends to understand, what can they do? Since right now, if you're in a state of lockdown, that is the first line of help that's available.
Yeah, it's very important. Dr. Rashmin made a very useful point that the society is fairly resilient and a lot of positive things in the society for them to be able to cope with the current situation. What can members of the family who are otherwise well do to help the individual who is either anxious or depressed. Some of the things I could perhaps make a list. It is important that the family members do not engage in conversation related to the disease or the concerns related to the COVID, concern related to the lockdown and the financial concern that the family could be facing. This is something that they need to keep in mind, that there is a flood of such negative information coming to the individual from many other corners. It could including perhaps the media, both printed and other things, headlines after headlines. At least these days it has gotten better thanks to all of you becoming extraordinarily sensitive on this issue. But initial days, there was a flood of information and concern raised. So this is something that the family members could well do,
Right.
not to indulge. More importantly, there are a lot of positive things in that family which can be pointed out to the individual. Maybe the son playing a carom board with this individual, or the wife calling him to help him in the kitchen, or the daughter saying that, can you help me with my homework? There are good things that are doable. And it is also important that the family does things together, whether it is cooking or bhajan or doing yoga or exercise. It's being together can make a lot of
Right.
tension get better.
Okay, let me go across to one more viewer on the phone line. Mayank is calling us from Mumbai. Good evening, Mayank. Go ahead, please. What would you like to share?
Good evening, Tanvi. You see, I am 69 years old and my wife is 65 years old. And we don't have issue, nobody is in the house. So the problem is she is a cancer patient and she is this TIA patient also, that she has got brain stroke. So she becomes on and off panicking. How to avoid that particular situation after this? This is a very important program which you are conducting, you know. Psychiatric, this thing, bad impact of COVID.
Yes.
Because this lockdown has increased, no? So more and more that fear of death is there.
Yes, Mr. Desai, I understand what you're saying. I can also understand why your wife would be, panicking. It's understandable completely. Let me ask Dr. Rashmin if he would want to take up this query. Dr. Rashmin?
Yes, Mr. Desai, the first thing I need to remind you is you are 65. You are way older than I am, and you have survived many more illnesses and many more challenges than I have. So clearly you are more resilient than the rest of the population to have reached this age, and you are healthy enough to be able to address this problem in the first place. So you need to understand from your own experiences. You've been there, you've done it. There are challenges right now because everybody is scared. Access to healthcare is becoming a bit of an issue, but do not worry. There are enough doctors out there to be able to help you. I can understand your anxiety. I can understand your fear of death, but this too shall pass, right? All you need to do is stay indoors. All you need to do is stay safe. Do not hesitate to ask for help. The biggest challenge with most of us is we believe that we have either no help, or we do not know how to go about it, or we simply will not be able to benefit from it. Trust me, you just need to speak to a few people. Instead of living with your fear and keeping on just ruminating with that fear repeatedly in your mind, all you need to do is pick up a phone, call a family member, call a friend, or call up one of us. We are all waiting to help you. You just ventilate. Once you are able to voice your concerns, half of it is resolved by the mere act of catharsis of being able to let it out of your system. And you need to understand that everybody is not going to get affected by COVID. A very small population. Right now, across all the studies across the world, they have realized that only 5% of the entire population was affected by COVID. Even in countries like Germany, in countries like Italy, where the curve has not flattened, in fact, it is on the decline. So you will probably not get affected by COVID. Even if you do, there is adequate amount of healthcare. Our doctors are available for you. They are very efficient. You have to just keep this in mind. This too shall pass. You are going to see the light at the end of the tunnel. You're going to see the other side of the curve. And in all probability, you will be able to meet us in the future and have a cup of coffee with us, maybe at a 6 feet distance rather than right next door. But trust me, this too shall pass. All you need to do is keep your reserves, keep your energy going, and do not lose hope.
Well, thank you so much. I hope that's helpful. But it was actually very helpful, even just listening to some words of encouragement that you brought in there, Dr. Rashmin. In fact, a big thank you to all four of you for joining us on this special conversation. And I think we should have more of these conversations, especially in these tough, trying times. We should have more of such conversations any which ways. But of course, the COVID-19 has just made the situation tougher for us. Because all I can say is, the lockdown itself, the economic turmoil, the fear of a possible disease, infection, fear of what might happen to you, to your family, the constraints of four walls, lack of opportunities to move around openly in open space, go to the gym, go to the club, go to the cinema, shop, all of those things are not there right now, and it is bound to have an effect on all of us. So we shouldn't be in denial. We should admit and we should acknowledge how it's affecting us, and then find ways to address it, and then find solution, and then see how we can fix it and how we can make it easier, not just for us, but also for our family members. Thank you so much for joining us on this conversation.